So in this video, we are going to cover the technique for a lateral lunge. All right, so it's got a couple different movement components with it as compared to the forward lunges. So again, as always, I usually start people as a stationary lunge to teach them the basic technique first before making it dynamic and having them step. So first part is taking a stance wider than shoulder width, and I'll dive into this a little bit after, but making sure they don't go too wide as well with their feet, which is really common with people. So first step, take it wider than shoulder width, and the very first thing I cue them on is the hip hinge that we taught in the squat. So very first step is the hips going back, okay, before the knee even starts to bend. It's a split second difference. Hip starts to go back, and then I start bending my knees, but it's very close, but the hips always initiate. Otherwise, if the knee initiates, I'm much more likely to have that knee come forward and then be all over the toes in the front of the foot, knee coming forward. All right, so start with the hip hinge. Hips start to go back, and then as I start to shift to the side, then I'm bending my knee and I'm getting my butt back again, keeping that knee behind the toes. So I'll come back a little bit more. Hopefully you can see it with the blue wall blending in. But hip hinge, go back, and then I'm shifting, and I'm reaching that butt back. And I will I'll be basically brushing their hips with my fingers, or just get my fingers right in their hips and push them back. I will push their body forward if they're having a really hard time getting into that lunge position there and the hips back. And then really just get their body in that position, because most people have not been in the position with their hip back that far, and they're not comfortable there. And so they don't even necessarily know how to get into that position. So I will use my hands and move their body into that position. Obviously, if they have the mobility, and I'm not gonna go that far if they can't. But if they can, I'm gonna move them into that position and say, this is where you wanna be. So if it feels foreign to you, then that's a good thing right now, and keep that feeling as you go from rep to rep. But moving on, start with the hip hinge, reaching the butt back. The other thing that I cue on is I find a lot of people, two things. In their stance, their toes are pointed outward. And it's not a bad thing, but it's much harder for them to get their hips back and initiate the hip hinge than if their toes are pointed straight forward. So here, again, well, I'll come forward so you can see sideways. I got my toes pointed out, even though you can't see them right now. And this, my hip blocks me here, right? And I can't go any lower than that. If I turn my toes straight forward now, then I can drop way down. It opens up my hip, the trochanter, the hip and ball socket there, and I can get significantly lower. So I get people to make sure they turn their toes straight forward. The other aspect of the stance of making sure they're not too wide is if I go really wide on my stance, when I lunge over, my hips are on the inside of my feet. And again, it's not a horrible thing, it's not a bad thing, but I don't get nearly as much glute activation this way as opposed to if I shorten up my stance a little bit, and when I drop down, I get my hip, my knee, and my ankle all in the same line here, almost as if they were all gonna touch the wall at the same time if I was against the wall. And then coming up and then shifting over to the other side. Hip, knee, and ankle all stacked up on top of each other, knee behind the toe, back straight through the whole time, and going through. Okay, so I teach that stationary lunge, and then I go into, obviously, the dynamic portion of adding in step. So feet together, step. This is where a lot of people have that tendency to point the toe out. Really cue them, keep that toe straight forward. I pause, get the hips back first, then go into that lateral lunge, come up and push. And I'll do that a few times and then translate them into a nice flow, dropping down and coming back up, as long as they're getting that hip hinge and their hips are starting to go back first so they can keep the knees behind the toes, weight in the heels, back straight, all of that. So that is your lateral lunge.